I was sitting in my lawyer's office when the words stopped making sense. The court filing in front of me had my name on every page, but I didn't recognize the story it was telling. Line after line, I read about joint assets being transferred out of our accounts. Properties moved into different names. Bank accounts closed. My lawyer, Mr. Patterson, sat across from me with his hands folded, watching me process what he already understood. "When did this start?" I asked, my voice barely working. He flipped to page 7. The first transaction was 5 years ago. April 2019. 5 years. I looked at the date again, then at the account numbers. These were ours. The savings we built together. The investment property we bought in 2018. The emergency fund we promised never to touch. All of it had been systematically moved, piece by piece, while I slept beside her every night. "She signed your name," Patterson said quietly. "Digitally. The bank has the authorizations on file." I felt my stomach drop. This wasn't a mistake. This was planned. I couldn't stop staring at one specific date. April 14th, 2019. 3 days after our anniversary. I remembered that night clearly because Victoria had organized a surprise dinner at the restaurant where we had our first date. She wore the blue dress I loved. We toasted to forever with champagne that cost more than our first month's rent together. I remember driving home that night, her hand in mine, thinking how lucky I was. 3 days later, she transferred $40,000 out of our joint savings into an account I'd never seen before. The next transfer happened a week after my birthday that same year. Then another after Christmas. Each one timed perfectly after moments when I felt closest to her. When my guard was completely down. When I believed in us the most. Patterson pointed to another entry. "Notice the pattern?" I did. Every major transfer happened within days of celebrations, trips, or family gatherings. Times when I was happy. Distracted. Trusting. "She used your emotions against you," he said. I felt sick. I went home that night and logged into our online banking. The dashboard looked normal at first. Checking account. Shared savings. The investment account. But when I scrolled down to where other accounts used to be listed, they were simply gone. Not closed with a zero balance. Just removed entirely from the system. I called the bank's customer service line and waded through the automated menu. When I finally reached a representative, I asked about the missing accounts. "Those were closed in 2020 and 2021, sir. Both required dual authorization." "I never authorized anything," I said. There was a pause. "According to our records, electronic signatures were verified through your login credentials on both occasions. Would you like me to email you copies of the authorization forms?" "Yes. Please." The files arrived 10 minutes later. I opened them with shaking hands. There was my signature. My email address. My authorization code. All of it looked legitimate. But I hadn't signed anything. The memories came back differently now. Every argument where Victoria told me I was terrible with money. Every conversation where she suggested I let her handle the finances because I was too stressed. The time she convinced our friends I'd overspent on a car I never bought. I opened old text messages between us. One from March 2020 caught my eye. "Victoria, you really need to pay more attention to our accounts. I can't keep fixing your mistakes." The timestamp showed 11:47 a.m. According to the bank records Patterson gave me, she had transferred $15,000 into her sister's name that same morning at 9:23 a.m. She spent the day making me feel irresponsible for problems she created. I scrolled further. Another message from July 2021, "Maybe you should let me manage everything. You're always forgetting stuff anyway." That same week, she'd moved our investment property deed into a trust controlled by her mother. This wasn't just theft. It was character assassination. She made me doubt myself while robbing us blind. The property in Riverside was supposed to be our retirement plan. We'd bought it together in 2018, a small rental house that generated steady income. I handled the maintenance. Victoria managed the rent collection. At least, that's what I thought. Patterson's documents showed the property was transferred to her sister Claire in August 2020. The deed was refiled with the county. The mortgage remained in our names, but the ownership changed. We kept making payments on a house we no longer legally owned. I called the property management company that handled our rentals. "Yes, sir, we've been sending checks to Claire Donovan since 2020, the manager confirmed. "Is there a problem?" "That property was jointly owned by my wife and me. Our records show Claire Donovan as the sole owner. Has been for years." I hung up and sat in silence. We'd paid nearly $60,000 in mortgage payments for a house that belonged to Victoria's family. The rental income, another $2,000 monthly, went straight to her sister. Victoria's entire family knew. And nobody said a word. The discovery process revealed something worse. Victoria had already submitted sworn statements to the court claiming most assets were hers before we married. She listed the Riverside property as premarital inheritance. She claimed the investment accounts were funded entirely by her salary. She even said I'd been financially dependent on her for years. I read her affidavit 3 times. Every single statement was a lie. We bought that property with money from both our incomes. The investment accounts started with my bonus from work. I earned more than she did for the first 6 years of our marriage. But she signed these documents under oath. Her signature was confident, clean. No hesitation. Patterson tapped the page. She's not panicking. She's not scrambling. This was rehearsed. What does that mean? It means she thinks she's already won. I looked at the filing date. She'd submitted this 3 weeks before I even knew we were heading to court. Before I'd hired Patterson. Before I knew anything was wrong. She'd been 10 steps ahead the whole time. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what Patterson said. About how prepared she was. How confident. I went down to the garage where I kept old boxes from our moves. Somewhere in there was my old laptop from my previous job. I found it under some holiday decorations. The battery was dead, but the charger still worked. While it powered on, I made coffee and tried to remember why I'd kept it. The screen lit up. Files I'd completely forgotten about appeared in folders organized by year. Bank statements I downloaded during tax season. Contracts from the Riverside purchase. Email confirmations. I never deleted anything because I was always worried I'd need records someday. I opened the folder labeled 2018 to 2020. Hundreds of documents. Mortgage applications. Property insurance. Transfer confirmations. Every major financial decision we made was documented here. I called Patterson at midnight. I have everything. Every transaction. Every document. All of it. From when? From the beginning. 7 years of records. For the first time since this started, I heard hope in his voice. Patterson brought in a forensic accountant named Mr. Wesley. He looked more like a professor than a financial detective, but he worked through my files with surgical precision. "Metadata is beautiful," he said, pulling up a document Victoria claimed she'd signed in 2017. "See this? The file was created in February 2020. Modified 6 times between then and last month. The IP address traces back to your home network. The laptop signature matches your wife's device." He showed me another document. "This transfer authorization? She claims you signed it in person at the bank. But the PDF metadata shows it was created on her laptop at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. The bank wasn't even open. Every document Victoria submitted to court had a digital fingerprint. Creation dates. Modification logs. Device identifiers. She'd been careless with technology, assuming nobody would look that deep." Wesley smiled for the first time. She built her entire case on fabricated documents. And we can prove every single one. I stared at the screen. For the first time in months, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't hopeless. Victoria acted normal at home. Too normal. She made dinner. She asked about my day. She laughed at something on television like nothing was wrong. I played along. I smiled. I talked about work. I pretended everything was fine. Inside, I was building a timeline that would destroy her story piece by piece. I started taking notes. Every time she mentioned money. Every time she made a comment about our future. I recorded the dates and compared them to the transaction records. One night she talked about how we should travel more while we're young. That same afternoon, she'd transferred $8,000 into an account under her mother's name. She was so confident, she wasn't even careful anymore. Patterson told me not to confront her. Let her think you don't know. The calmer you stay, the more comfortable she gets. Comfortable people make mistakes. So I stayed silent. I listened. I documented. And I watched her dig herself deeper every single day. Her mistake came from an unexpected place. Her best friend, Nina, accidentally forwarded me a voice message. It was meant for someone else, but my name was in the contact list right above the intended recipient. I almost deleted it. Then I heard Victoria's voice. I've been moving things around for years. He has no idea. By the time he figures it out, I'll be set up completely. He's not smart enough to track any of it anyway. Nina's laughter in the background. You're terrible. I'm strategic, Victoria corrected. There's a difference. The message was timestamped between two major asset transfers. March 2021. Right after we'd celebrated paying off one of our cars. The same week she moved $25,000 into an offshore account. I saved the file. Backed it up. Sent it to Patterson. This wasn't just evidence. This was intent. In her own words. Her own voice. Mocking me while stealing from us. Patterson's response came immediately, we just won. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Victoria walked in wearing a navy suit, her hair pulled back, confident. Her lawyer carried a thick briefcase and wore an expression that said this would be easy. I sat across the aisle with Patterson. I had one binder. Simple. Clean. Organized. Victoria's lawyer opened with a lengthy statement about premarital assets and financial independence. He painted me as someone who'd been supported by Victoria's hard work. Someone who contributed little and now wanted half of everything. The judge listened without expression. Then Patterson stood. Your Honor, I'd like to submit a complete financial timeline for the court's review. It includes transaction records, metadata analysis, and recorded admissions from the respondent. He placed the binder on the bailiff's desk. Victoria glanced at it, then at me. For the first time, I saw something flicker in her expression. Confusion. Then concern. The judge opened the binder. Flipped through pages. Stopped on one. Read carefully. Flipped again. The courtroom went silent. We'll take a recess, the judge said finally. 1 hour. Outside the courtroom, Victoria's lawyer pulled her aside. I couldn't hear everything, but I caught pieces. Why didn't you tell me about the transfers? I did tell you. Not like this. This is a pattern. This is documented fraud. Her voice rose. That's not what this is. Then explain the metadata. Explain the voice recording. Explain the accounts in your sister's name. She couldn't. Her phone buzzed repeatedly. Her mother. Her sister. Friends who'd been supporting her. Everyone was suddenly unavailable. Text messages went unanswered. Calls went to voicemail. I watched from across the hall. For the first time since this began, Victoria looked scared. Patterson stood beside me. She thought she controlled the narrative. Now she realizes she never did. When we returned to the courtroom, Victoria's confidence was gone. Her hands fidgeted with her papers. Her lawyer looked tired. The judge asked a single question. "Are you prepared to explain these discrepancies, Mrs. Donovan?" Victoria opened her mouth. Nothing came out. The bank compliance officer was sworn in as a witness. He was a middle-aged man with glasses and a calm demeanor. He explained digital authorization systems in plain terms the judge could follow. "Every transaction requires biometric verification or two-factor authentication," he said. The transfers in question used Mrs. Donovan's verified credentials exclusively. Victoria's lawyer stood. Could someone else have accessed her accounts? Not with biometric data. Fingerprint and facial recognition are unique. The logs show her device, her location, her verification. And the joint authorizations? Those signatures were created digitally using credentials traced to Mrs. Donovan's laptop. The timestamps confirm she was the sole user during those sessions. The judge leaned forward. "So there's no possibility of shared access or error?" "None, Your Honor." Victoria's claim of ignorance collapsed in real time. The courtroom felt heavier. The narrative had flipped completely. I watched her face. The realization was settling in. There was no way out. The judge closed the binder and removed her glasses. She looked directly at Victoria. "Mrs. Donovan, I've reviewed the timeline submitted by the petitioner. Every major asset transfer occurred within days of significant marital events. Anniversaries. Birthdays. Holidays. Can you explain why this pattern exists if these actions weren't intentional?" Victoria hesitated. "I was trying to protect our assets." "From whom?" Silence. "Were you protecting them from your husband? The person you were legally obligated to share them with?" "I just wanted to be prepared." "Prepared for what, Mrs. Donovan?" Victoria didn't answer. Couldn't answer. The silence said everything her words couldn't. The judge made a note. "I'm requesting amended financial disclosures from both parties. Full transparency. Any further discrepancies will result in sanctions." Victoria's lawyer nodded quickly. But the damage was done. The judge's tone had shifted. She wasn't just listening anymore. She was questioning. After the hearing, Victoria's support system vanished. Friends who'd publicly defended her suddenly went quiet. Her sister Claire stopped answering calls. Even her mother, who'd held one of the hidden properties, filed paperwork to distance herself from the situation. I watched it happen through mutual friends. People who once said I was overreacting now privately admitted they'd been told lies. Victoria had painted me as controlling, financially irresponsible, even emotionally abusive. Now those same people were reading court documents that told a different story. Nina, the friend who'd accidentally sent me the voice message, reached out. "I'm sorry. I didn't know the full picture. She told us you were hiding money from her." I didn't respond with anger. I didn't need to. The truth was spreading without me saying a word. Victoria's isolation wasn't my doing. It was the natural consequence of years of lies catching up at once. People don't stay loyal to someone who manipulated them too. Victoria's legal team filed an emergency motion claiming emotional distress. They argued the court proceedings were causing her severe anxiety and requested delays. They submitted medical documentation showing she'd been prescribed medication for stress. Patterson responded with our own medical records. Doctor visits I'd made over the past 2 years for anxiety. Therapy sessions where I'd discussed feeling gaslit about finances. Prescriptions for sleep aids because I couldn't rest. All of it timestamped during the period Victoria was systematically transferring our assets. The respondent claims distress from discovery, Patterson argued. The petitioner experienced distress from the actual fraud. The judge reviewed both submissions. Her expression hardened. "Motion denied," she said. "This court recognizes emotional harm, but it appears to have originated from the respondent's actions, not the legal process addressing them. Victoria's lawyer sat down, defeated. The narrative had completely reversed. She was no longer the victim protecting herself. She was the aggressor facing consequences. And everyone in that courtroom knew it. The complete financial timeline took 3 days to present. 7 years of transactions laid out chronologically. Every transfer. Every forged signature. Every hidden account. Wesley walked the court through each entry methodically. April 2019. Joint savings reduced by $40,000. Funds moved to an account under the name Claire Donovan. December 2019. Investment property refinanced. Deed transferred to Victoria Donovan Trust, controlled by her mother. March 2020. Retirement account beneficiary changed from spouse to sister. No notification sent to account holder. The pattern was undeniable. This wasn't financial mismanagement. It was systematic extraction of marital assets over years. The phrase that mattered most came near the end: marital fraud. When that term entered the official record, I saw Victoria's shoulders drop. Her lawyer whispered something to her. She shook her head. That phrase meant everything. It wasn't just about divorce anymore. It was about intentional deception. And the court took that seriously. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: validation. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. I was right. Victoria's lawyer requested a private meeting. Patterson and I sat across from them in a conference room that smelled like old coffee and leather. We'd like to propose a settlement, her lawyer began. Mrs. Donovan is willing to return a portion of the disputed assets. In exchange, we request this matter be resolved quietly, without further public filings. Patterson didn't even open his notebook. Absolutely not. Be reasonable. A trial will be expensive for everyone. The evidence is comprehensive, Patterson said calmly. Your client committed documented fraud. She's facing financial penalties and potential criminal referral. A settlement saves her, not us. Victoria's lawyer tried again. What would it take? Full asset return. Complete financial transparency. Admission of wrongdoing in the record. And Mrs. Donovan covers all legal fees. Victoria stood abruptly. I'm not admitting anything. Patterson smiled. Then we'll see you in court. They left without another word. I looked at Patterson. Was that smart? Rejecting a settlement? You didn't do anything wrong, he said. Why should you compromise? He was right. This wasn't about winning anymore. It was about truth. And the truth doesn't negotiate. The final judgment took 3 weeks. When the ruling came, it was devastating for Victoria. All transferred assets ordered returned to joint ownership. Financial penalties assessed for fraud. Legal fees, both hers and mine, assigned to her. The judge's statement was explicit and damning. The evidence presented demonstrates clear intent to deceive and unlawfully extract marital assets. Mrs. Donovan engaged in sustained financial misconduct that undermines the legal protections of marriage. This court finds her actions constitute marital fraud. Victoria didn't look at me when the judgment was read. She stared at the table, her face pale. Her lawyer tried to argue for leniency. The judge cut him off. Your client had years to act honestly. She chose deception. The consequences reflect that choice. Outside the courtroom, I didn't feel victorious. I felt relieved. Years of questioning myself were over. I had been right. The system had recognized it. That was enough. The months after the judgment were surreal. Properties were transferred back. Accounts were restored. Victoria lost access to assets she never should have controlled. The Riverside property returned to joint ownership before being sold. The proceeds split exactly as the law intended. She had to sell her car to cover legal fees. Her family distanced themselves further, probably afraid of being implicated. The trust her mother controlled was dissolved under court order. Meanwhile, I restructured everything. New accounts. New passwords. New beneficiaries clearly documented. I worked with a financial advisor to ensure every asset was properly protected and titled. The difference was stark. She'd built her future on lies and lost it all. I defended the truth and came out stable. Not richer. Not happier yet. But protected. And that mattered more than anything. The first morning I woke up alone without anxiety was strange. No notifications about court dates. No emails from lawyers. No wondering if she'd transferred something else overnight. Just silence. I made coffee slowly. Sat on the porch. Watched the sunrise without my mind racing through worst-case scenarios. Peace felt unfamiliar. For years, my mornings started with dread. Checking accounts. Watching for discrepancies. Living in constant suspicion. Now there was nothing to check. Nothing to fear. It took time to adjust. I kept reaching for my phone to verify balances. Old habits from years of being gaslit don't disappear overnight. But slowly, the tension eased. My shoulders relaxed. Sleep came easier. The knot in my stomach finally loosened. Surviving shouldn't feel like an accomplishment. But it did. I'd made it through. And that was worth acknowledging. Friends who'd believed Victoria's story started reaching out. Apologies came slowly, awkwardly. Some admitted they thought I was paranoid. Others said they didn't want to get involved. A few confessed they'd seen warning signs but ignored them. I didn't gloat. Didn't lecture. I just accepted their words and moved on. One friend, Brian, met me for coffee. I should have believed you earlier. She was convincing. She had practice, I said. Still. I'm sorry. It's fine. You didn't have the documents I had. You saw what she wanted you to see. The truth had spread without me pushing it. Court records were public. People who cared enough looked them up. Those who defended Victoria quietly stopped. The ones who doubted me quietly apologized. Vindication doesn't need volume. It just needs time. Rebuilding wasn't about money. It was about trust. Trusting my instincts again. Trusting that I wasn't broken or foolish. Trusting that I could recognize honesty after years of deception. I set new goals. Small ones first. Pay off remaining debt. Build an emergency fund that actually stayed untouched. Save for things I wanted, not things someone else controlled. I started saying no to things that didn't feel right. Setting boundaries I'd abandoned during the marriage. Protecting my peace instead of keeping everyone else comfortable. Therapy helped. So did distance. So did time. The betrayal didn't define me anymore. It taught me. Sharpened me. Showed me what I wouldn't accept again. I wasn't the same person who sat in Patterson's office staring at court documents. I was clearer now. Calmer. Intentional about everything. 6 months later, I heard Victoria was warning people about financial betrayal in relationships. The irony was almost funny. She was telling her story like she'd been the victim. Rewriting history again, just like she rewrote our financial records. I didn't correct her. Didn't engage. People who knew the truth already knew. People who didn't weren't my concern. Brian texted me, "Did you see what she posted?" Unbelievable. I hadn't. And I didn't need to. Her version of events didn't change the court records. Didn't change the judgment. Didn't change reality. Karma doesn't argue with liars. It just quietly dismantles them over time. I felt nothing when I heard about her attempts to rewrite history. No anger. No bitterness. Just indifference. She was my past. And she could stay there. The final paperwork arrived on a Tuesday morning. Dissolution complete. Assets divided. Accounts closed. Everything finalized. I signed the last page in my kitchen, same place I used to pay bills while she transferred money behind my back. The irony wasn't lost on me. But this signature was different. It wasn't authorizing something I didn't understand. It was closing a chapter one fully comprehended. I put the document in a file labeled complete and placed it in the cabinet. Not hidden. Not secret. Just filed away properly where it belonged. Then I made breakfast. Opened the windows. Let fresh air clear out the staleness. The house felt different now. Lighter. Like something heavy had finally been removed. I thought about everything that happened. The betrayal. The discovery. The fight. The resolution. All of it led here. To this quiet morning where I could finally breathe without restriction. She'd planned in secret, thinking she was smarter than everyone. I'd survived in silence, documenting everything she thought I'd miss. And in the end, the records remembered everything her lies tried to erase.